there is disagreement and conflict in the White House in regard to Trump's latest executive order that has to do with regulating social media platforms as the White House turns.
Made some very big mistakes.
I asked for his resignation.
I'm disappointed in the Attorney General.
So, as most of you probably already know at this point, Donald Trump has signed an executive order to basically punish Twitter for fact-checking some of his misinformation regarding mail-in voting. Now, the details of this executive order basically indicate that the federal government would have much more control over what these companies can do. And it turns out that there are members of Trump's administration who disagree with this. They think it's a terrible idea. And I want to tell you who those people are. So Yahoo News actually spoke to some White House officials, and here's what they found. White House sources tell Yahoo News that the office of Vice President Mike Pence, National Economic Council Chairman Larry Kudlow, and others are making the argument that it will set a bad precedent to signal that the federal government can go after private companies and seek to penalize them for purely political reasons. In fact, one White House official tells Yahoo News there's pushback from a lot of people inside the White House. And he also says, he or she also says, that there's, quote, a lot of frustration among advisors who are often some of Trump's most loyal backers. And so who knows whether they're going to speak out against this publicly. But what I do know is that Republicans traditionally do not like big government or mostly big government regulation of private corporations, especially these behemoths. So we'll see how this plays out. And we'll also see whether or not Donald Trump's executive order has any teeth to begin with.
Yeah. So first of all, the executive order details, and then I'll get to why some conservatives are flipping out about this. One part of it is to say the federal government will not give any advertising to any platform that discriminates based on content. Now, the reality is, of course, these folks don't discriminate based on content. Twitter is now begrudgingly, very late in the game, has said one thing that Trump has tweeted is not accurate. He's already said thousands of things on Twitter that were not accurate. But even that tiny little pinprick, he says, that's it. I'm now declaring them biased, and they won't get any federal advertising. Now, you might not be aware, but there is actually at least $1.5 billion in advertising the federal government does for public service announcements, et cetera. So that really hurts them economically. And then there's Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. This is the most relevant part. It allows online companies to not be responsible for what their users say on those platforms. Now, which leads into why some conservatives are not happy with the direction that Trump is going. Have you ever read the comment section of any conservative website? On day one, if this new rule was in effect, they would all be dragged into court and probably held liable for the insane things that right-wingers say on right-wing websites. But by the way, right-wingers go on to left-wing websites, go on to neutral websites, go on to social media and say insane things and threaten people's lives and say things that are libelous, and the list goes on and on. So basically, if you take away Section 230, almost every company online that takes comments or any kind of user interaction would immediately be shut down. So Breitbart gone instantly, Daily Caller, Daily Wire, you name it, they'd all be wiped off the map. So it's obviously a disastrous idea. Trump, as usual, doesn't ask anyone, doesn't do his homework. And he's like, oh, they offended me. Oh my God, they hurt my feelings. That's it, I'm going to ban them, right? And he goes and does this. He already signed it. And then Pence and Mnuchin and all these guys are like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Don't do that, right? So that's point one. But point two is what Anna was alluding to. Republicans are not an ideological party. They're a vehicle for multinational corporations. That's all they do, is serve those corporations. So this is an attack on private corporations that at the end of the day are the masters of the Republican Party. So that's why the Mnuchins of the world are like, Mr. President, these are our bosses. What are you doing? No. And they're like, we bow to them. We bow to them. How can you do this, Mr. President? And Trump, I'm sure, was like, what? And then they're like, hey, idiot, they're going to cut off your funding. You know all those great donations you're getting, campaign donations? Consider goodbye. Oh, yeah, I didn't mean it, is probably what's next. So my guess is Trump will walk this back, not because he's not willing to violate the Constitution, obviously a violation of the Constitution, to threaten private people or companies, especially media companies, with them being shut down because they criticize the president. In this case, not even a criticism. All it is saying 2 + 2 does not equal 5, it equals 4. To shut him down for that is core violation of the First Amendment, freedom of speech and freedom of the press. He doesn't care about that. Mnuchin and Pence couldn't care about that if their life depended on it. But they do care about the campaign donations and shutting down right-wing websites. That's why Trump will probably at some point walk this back.
Yeah, I think so as well. And keep in mind, this isn't the first time Trump has signed executive orders knowing that he would violate the Constitution and that the executive order would be challenged and then stricken down in the courts. I mean, that's happened before. But also understand that he does this as a rallying cry. This is the way he excites his base. This is the way that he further divides the country. He loves the conflict. He loves the drama. This is a 100% a campaign strategy. And also, let's not forget, it's a way to distract people from the fact that his complete and utter failure as a leader has led to now more than 100,000 Americans dying during the pandemic. His inaction, his incompetence, his absolute disregard and lack of compassion for human life, that's what the story is. And that's what he wants to distract his own supporters from. But my guess is many of his supporters have lost their own family members due to Trump's incompetence and his lack of compassion for human life. So that's something to keep in mind as this type of story gets a ton of attention and sucks up most of the news cycle. Trump is a failure. Don't forget about it.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.